Good afternoon, class. So today I am going to start class with a quick news clip, and it may trigger some strong emotions. If you need to be excused, that's fine. But I just kind of want you to think about some of the things that you see and how you feel, and hold on to those thoughts because I will be asking for those at the conclusion of the video. So let's check this out. So after viewing this clip, I want you to think about some of the emotions that you felt, some of the emotions that you saw in the video, and the information that was shared, and just the overall footage. Think about that for a second. And I want you to express what you saw, how you felt, what you think others felt while you watched that. But here's the trick. You only can express those thoughts in 1 to 2 words, all right? So I want you to just call them out. What were some things that you saw? What were some things that you felt? What was some information that was shared? All right? Violence. Okay, what's something else? Military. What's something else we may have seen? Okay, sad families. All right, anything else? What did we hear that was mentioned? What was this video mostly about? Okay, drugs. All right, any other thoughts? Come on, just yell them out. Before we get into our objective, I want you to consider this question as we progress throughout the lesson, okay? So it is, how has poverty and the war on drugs contributed to immigration in Mexico, okay? So I want you to just think about that, let it rest with you for a minute, and keep it in the back of your brain as we progress through the lesson. Now let's look at our objectives. So our first objective says, I can evaluate the role of poverty and drugs on immigration in Mexico in order to explain its effect on Mexican-United States relations. And then our next objective says, I can cite textual evidence in order to support an analysis of what the text says explicitly. Does that objective sound a little bit familiar? It should, because that's our ELA objective, and we're going to be integrating and using some of our strategies from ELA to help us extract information in this social studies lesson. Our objective and make sense of it. First, we have evaluate, which is to decide the value or worth of after study. Explain, to make something clear by describing it. Cartel, an association of manufacturers or suppliers with the purpose of maintaining prices at a high level and restricting competition. Drugs, a medicine or other substance which has physiological effect when ingested or otherwise introduced to the body. Migration, movement from one part of something to another. Immigration, the act of coming to live permanently in a foreign country. Immigrate, the act of leaving a country to live in another country. Poverty, the state of being extremely poor. Now that we've defined our key terms and our vocabulary, let's go through this objective, or both of these objectives, and mark it up, see if we can make it a little bit simpler in terms, and see how we can progress from there. All right, so first we have evaluate, we had the word poverty, we had drugs. Don't necessarily need to define some of these words because we know the meaning, but let's underline them anyway since they are key terms. We have immigration. We also have explain, that's one of those words where we kind of get the gist of what it means. And then we can go down to our ELA standard and we remember cite, we remember evidence, we remember analysis, and we have explicitly. All right? Now that we've annotated our objectives and we have a clear understanding of what we're expected to do, let's now look at this quick presentation and just kind of get front loaded with some information, because today's lesson is going to be about you acquiring information on your own, extracting it on your own, and me facilitating you while you do it. All right, so conflict and change in Latin America. First, we'll be looking at poverty. And it says poverty and why. I'm going to give you some statistics on poverty as well as why those statistics are. So it's a major concern throughout the region. 1 in 5 people in the region are living in chronic poverty, meaning that these people are always in poverty. There's no up or down, good days, bad days. It's always been that way, and it's most likely, unless something changes as to where they leave the country, it may stay that way, okay? So then we have lack of high quality and high skill employment opportunities. There's insufficient investment in education and access to education. And then this is something that I thought was interesting. More than half of the 15-year-olds in the region are functionally illiterate. So that would take a huge toll to a country where most of your teens that grow up to be adults are functionally illiterate, in addition to living in poverty. That takes a toll on the country, on the region. So then we'll talk about the war on drugs. The war on drugs negatively affects the region's development. So Central America, and that consists of Guatemala and Mexico mainly, serve as a channel for drugs to be funneled into the United States. So keep that in mind when we're thinking about Mexican and U.S. relations, okay? So the U.S. has tried to inhibit this drug trafficking, but they have failed because of the corrupt government and collusion with cartels. Collusion basically means working with or alongside the cartels and doing things that are illegal, right? So that's something that has kind of impacted U.S. and Mexican relations. So keep that in mind as well. Then we have immigration. And to escape the war on drugs and get access to better living environments and working opportunities, Latinos from the Latin American region have immigrated to the U.S. and legally through naturalization or illegal immigration. Like I said, I keep referring to our objective so that you can keep that in the forefront while you're doing your research and you're extracting your information for some of the materials I'm going to provide to you today. So, with all of that being said, I want to present you with a driving question. And I call it a driving question that's a part of our problem-based learning, but I kind of want to make a mini project within this unit. And the question is, how can we bring awareness to communities about immigration, drug crimes, and poverty in Mexico? And how does this impact the political and economic relationship with the United States? What are some ways that we can bring awareness to the U.S., to communities in the U.S.? Because this not only impacts immigrants from Mexico or other Latin American countries, but it impacts the U.S. as well. So I want you to think about that. We're not going to get into that just this moment, but also keep that in mind. And I'll post it so that you'll be able to see it throughout the lesson. So here's what we're going to do. Now that I've somewhat front-loaded you with information about poverty, war on drugs, and immigration as it relates to Mexico and the United States, I now want you to be the researchers, and I want you to do some extracting of information from some materials that I'll be providing you. So you're going to work in collaborative groups of 5, and we're going to do something called Jigsaw. Any of you familiar with Jigsaw? We do it in our professional developments all the time as teachers. So how this is going to work, you're going to be divided into groups of 5. Each student in the group is going to receive a different article that relates to today's objective. After you read your article, you'll get about 7 to 10 minutes to kind of skim it, annotate it, mark it up, and use some of these ELA strategies and make inferences and use your background knowledge and use clues from the text to help you make sense of this information. After you do that, you're then going to come out of your groups and go work with other learners that have the same article as you. You're going to master the content. You're going to discuss what you read. Make sure everybody's clear on the information that was presented in that article. Then it's going to be your job to come back to your group and share that information from your article. I could make you all read 4 articles, right? But that wouldn't mean anything, and you probably wouldn't retain a lot of the information. So you're going to teach each other. And after doing that, you're then going to focus on the essential questions. I'll give each team a piece of chart paper, and you're going to answer the questions. How has poverty and the war on drugs contribute to immigration in Mexico? And how does immigration, drug crimes, and poverty in Mexico impact the social, political, and economic relationship with the United States? You're going to read for this information in the articles that I provide for you. I want you to really, really take the time to annotate these texts, mark them up, and really discuss and collaborate with your teams so that you can get the most out of this lesson. Because we do have a culminating project at the end that is a result of our driving question. And then we have a mini project today where you'll be creating a newspaper providing information about poverty, immigration, as well as the war on drugs in Mexico. All right, are y'all ready? Is everybody clear on what we're going to do? If you're still confused, raise your hand. I'll clarify for you and we'll get started.